all of you. And of course, it's a deep topic, the Radha and the love, the prema that she personifies. It's highest ideal in terms of the prayojan tattva of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, to taste the prema of Radha. And that is not very easy to say, to talk about, and to articulate, but it's much, much, much more difficult to attain than to talk about, which isn't easy. So we'll try to say a few words, hopefully will inspire us to pursue that ideal. And for that, we turn to Srimad-Bhagavatam. Of course, the Bhagavatam is a very long book and a very old book, and written in a language that is not common today. And even in its time, it was not common, but the language of sadhus, scholars, amongst sadhus for that matter. Not every sadhu is a scholar. So given that, those facts, it's not an easy book to understand by us in our times today. And that said, nonetheless, it is the main pramana or source of scriptural evidence for the position that the Gaudiya Vaishnavas take with regard to the central position of Radha in the context of loving Krishna. And that comes to bear, of course, in the context of the Bhagavatam, within the 5 chapters dealing with the Rasa Lila. Ras Panchadhyay. Adhyay means chapter, Panch means 5. So there's 5 chapters. I've said before that when we get to the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, which is, if you want to compare the entire Bhagavatam as it is sometimes to the body of Krishna, the 10th canto is his smiling face. And there we find there are 3 main centers of rasic concentration that showcase Vatsalya Rasa, the chapters surrounding the Damodar Leela, Sakya Rasa, the chapters really beginning with the Brahma Vimohan Leela, extending over several chapters. This is from a Vatsalya Rasa center to a Sakya Rasa center to the 5 chapters dealing with the Rasa Leela. We have a Madhurya Rasa center, and that's the center, if you will, of the Bhagavatam. This is where the text reaches its apex, its zenith. Everything after that reflects back on it, so to speak. And everything prior to that is building up to, at least in the context of the Braj Leela itself, that the 10th canto describes. Everything prior to that is leading up to this. So it's an exciting time. And we're dealing, of course, with the Gopis' love for Krishna. And what is brought out in this section is that amongst the Gopis, one of them is there's a special one. Sometimes we're asked why, if Radha is so important, if she's so central, if she is the fullest expression of love for Krishna, prema mahi, Mahabhavini, Mahabhav Swarupini, the very form of Mahabhav, and so on. These ways in which we Gaudias describe her. If this is the case, why is her name not even mentioned in your book, the Bhagavatam? And it's a common question. There are several answers to that question, but one way to approach that is to pause and point out that no gopis' names are mentioned in the Bhagavatam. No gopis' names are mentioned. But nonetheless, it is mentioned that one of them is special. So we know from the Bhagavatam there is a special one. From the narrative, there can be no doubt about that. We'll go through that a little bit. What is her name? It doesn't make that much difference. There's a special one. And she has different names for that matter by which she is known. For example, if we go to the Shruti, the Gopal Talpani Upanishad, we find there's a special leader, so to speak, in terms of love amongst the gopis. And there she's known as Gandharvika. So she has different names, just like we ourselves go by different names, nicknames, first names, last names, so on and so forth, spiritual names. And of course, in other Puranas, like the Padma Purana, Vishnu Purana, Harivamsa Purana, Radha's name is mentioned, other gopis' names are mentioned, but again, no gopis' names are mentioned in the Bhagavatam. But one gopi, it is pointed out that one gopi is special and has worshipped Krishna better than anyone else, and thus in the midst of their union, as the rasa dance is about to begin, suddenly Krishna disappears, of course, and the gopis go looking for him, following his footprints. But before we go into that further, one of the ways, continuing along this line of thought, to answer the question is that in Indian aesthetics, Ras Shastra, it's considered to be a fault if the parakiya, or the paramour lover's name, is mentioned. She shouldn't be mentioned. In worldly rasa, it's hard to refer to it like this, because Bharat, the kind of sage who is the original propounder of enunciator of Indian aesthetics, speaks about worldly rasa in a way that, in his estimation, leads to displacing oneself from the immediate and entering into an experience that somehow could be comparative to Brahman realization. Something like deep sleep is comparative to Brahman realization. So when you enter the theater and through drama and the arts, you are transported out from where you are seated and into the experience in the drama. You get displaced a little bit from your material preoccupation of self and so forth. So it's something along these lines. We call it secular rasa or worldly rasa, because it's not talking about bhakti rasa as a transcendental ideal, but he was obviously a religious man, so it's hard to refer to it as secular rasa. But the rasa theory of Indian aesthetics, or Indian aesthetics in which rasa is the soul, the fullest, richest expression of emotion and so forth. In that, so there are rules, And one of the rules is not to mention the name of the Parakiya lover, because that is the Parakiya is not brought out there as a viable emotional ideal. But when we come to the bhakti rasa of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, of the Bhagavatam, Nigama Kalpataro Galitam Phalam, Sukumugaramadrava Samhitam, Pibata Bhagavatam Rasam Alayam, Muhuraho Rasika Bhupi Bhavaka. Bhagavatam tells us in its third stanza, the opening of the book, that this book, this is a Ras Shastra. It's the ripened fruit of the tree of all the Vedic literature, and that tree has made it, that fruit has made itself available in the form of the Bhagavatam, because it's Galitam Phalam. It's a fruit that's fallen from the branch, so it's easy to pick up. You don't have to climb the tree and pick it up, smell it, taste it, drink it, and you will pass out from it. And when you wake up, what you should you do? It says again, drink it again. Given that it's a Ras Shastra, and given that Krishna, because it's spiritual, is the object of love, the Vishaya Lambana of all the rasas. Therefore, in relation to him, if there's Parakiya, this is not a blemish, this is not a problem. But nonetheless, Sukadeva is following, so to speak, the standard. Don't mention the Parakiya lover's name. And they're all Parakiya lovers, every one of those gopis. So none of their names are mentioned. Of course, it's also said from another point of view, from the point of view of ecstasy, that had Sukadev mentioned her name, he might have passed out, and the text would have been interrupted, but the narrative would have been interrupted. But again, none of the names are mentioned, and this broader idea is covered from the point that I've raised. But what is pointed out, as we're explaining and have mentioned already, is that one gopi is singled out as being special. And of course, she is said to have been Aradhana, one who worshipped better. Aradhana means the best worshiper, Aradhana. So she worshipped more, was the conclusion of the gopis who were looking for Krishna. Arguably, some of them at least, who weren't her close friends and supporters, hadn't necessarily conceded to the fact that she was special. Certainly her own friends, Sakis, Manjaris, knew that, but not everybody would necessarily concede that point. They didn't notice that although Krishna had disappeared, another gopi, one gopi, had gone with him. But when suddenly, following the footprints of Krishna, the footprints of another gopi also showed up, then they had to admit there's two ways to understand this nice verse of the Bhagavatam, nice section of the 32nd chapter of the second and the last of the 5 chapters in the Ras Panchadhyaya, dealing with this Bandhari Rasa and Radha's praying. Two ways. The more popular way amongst the commentators is to say that Radha's Manjaris, Radha's Sakis, her friends and her maidservants and her friends, when they saw the footprint, because they knew what the lotus imprint of Radha's foot looked like, being familiar with it, massaging it when the occasion arose, and so on and so forth, they could understand, Radha is with Krishna, another special. So they said, Aradhana, he's with another gopi. Bhakti Vinod, however, takes a different course in his Bhagavad Arkam Richinimal, where he takes 1,000 verses of the Bhagavatam and categorizes them according to Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojana. He says at the end of the book, the Swarup Damodar appeared before him and told him to write this book. So it's a special book. But in that book, describing this verse, he gives voice to Chandravali. And Chandravali says, oh, she has worshipped him more. So in his perspective on this, she is conceding at this point. Well, there's another gopi, it's my cousin. And actually, she's pleased Krishna more than me. That's her conclusion, right? Who else could it be? My chief competitor. There's no one that's in close competition with me except Radha, my cousin, but she's won. I can see, oh, he's with another gopi. So this has a strong effect on the gopis who continue their search. Meanwhile, and this is the place where Radha's name, of course, is mentioned indirectly. So it is there. But they continue their search, and meanwhile, Krishna is with Radha alone. And the implication, of course, of that is that with all of the gopis, Krishna is not satisfied. But if Radha's not there, but if Radha's there and no other gopis are there, he can be satisfied. It reminds me of a chapter of Gopal Champu that is an original chapter written by Jiva Goswami. Most of his chapters in the book follow the chapters of the Bhagavatam and reiterate them with his own insights and his own feelings, of course, to bring out these sentiments. At the end of the book, he says, so you take your pick. I've taken them you through step by step the different rasas. Which one appeals to you? Follow it. Something like that. So most of his chapters in Gopal Champu, which constitutes a retelling of the Prakat Leela, follow the chapters of the Bhagavatam, but he has a couple of original chapters. And just prior to the chapters on Rasa Leela, one of his original chapters depicts Krishna practicing with his flute, which has extraordinary effects. And he was successful having an impact on the inanimate creatures, on the animal kingdom, on other humans, and so on and so forth. But his goal in such fluting is to attract the attention of Radha, ultimately. He hasn't been successful yet. He's learning the art. But in this chapter, he plays his flute such he gets close, in that all of the gopis assemble, but Radha didn't come. She passed out in her place, but couldn't come. So they all come, and he then, seeing that Radha's not there, he cannot be satisfied. He has to send them all back. Meanwhile, Radha's maidservants are with Radha, and there she seems to be in a comatose condition. Purnamasi's brought to try to remedy the situation, and she sends Madhu Mangal to bring Krishna there, saying, basically saying, you caused this problem, you have to resolve it. It's a beautiful, beautiful chapter. But point being that with all of the gopis and not Radha, Krishna cannot be pleased. With Radha alone, without all the gopis, he can be. Now, this is not to make less of any of the gopis. They're all worshipable by us. They're all Kaya Vyuha. It means they're extensions of Kaya Vyuha, extensions of Radha's own body, which is the embodiment of Mahabhav. Mahabhav is like something like this. Within Krishna, all of the avatars are found. So all of their excellences, all of their specialities, and so forth, that different devotees become attracted to and thus become devotees of that avatar or another avatar, are all within Krishna and more. Similarly, all the possibilities of rasa, bhava, are within Mahabhav. She's the embodiment of Mahabhav. That's why I say sometimes that in every devotee, there's a little bit of Radha, Ladini, Shakti. So in particular, relative to our point here, the gopis are expansions of her own body, which means they are embodiments of aspects of her bhav, her beauty, rupa, for example. It means in this case, beauty. Rupa Manjari is the beauty of Radha, personified. Just take the beauty. So just to give an example. So we're not minimizing them, but while some aspect of Radha in the form of one gopi or another can satisfy Krishna for the moment, to some extent, he can only be fully satisfied in the company of Radhika. And there's a need. We'll go into this too. There's a need for these other gopis in terms of such, in order that the love of Radha and Krishna can be what it is. But here they are all searching for Radha, and meanwhile Krishna is with her alone. But then Krishna, as the chapter goes, disappears from Radha as well, and the gopis arrive on the scene, and they see the desperation of Radha, the measure of her bhav in separation, which is more powerful, more overwhelming than the entirety of their separation combined. They're experiencing separation from Krishna. I mean, you have to understand the point here. They have left home in the middle of the night, let the milk boil over, let the babies cry, let those who are married, let the husbands forget whatever, and dharma out the window. What will happen to the whole village? What will the reputation of the village be if in this village all these girls are illicit? What kind of village is that? They didn't care for that. Let that happen. They had no ear for that, only ear for the flute sound of Krishna, and they went. At such risk, everything they risked, their reputation. I mean, they could have their be locked out of their own homes, disbanded or disinherited by their parents, cut off, and so forth, become homeless people in the forest. At such risk, they went, and Krishna disappeared from them. What's their position? How they felt? We try to imagine what will become of them. Where is he gone? Why is he doing this? And then they come upon Radha, who he didn't do that to, but now he has done that to. He's left her also. But her condition exceeds in great magnitude that of all of their condition and separation combined, their desperation combined. And then, of course, they gather together, giving sympathy, empathy for one another as a group. They all feel the same way, so there's somewhat, the burden is somewhat mitigated by sharing one's burden with another. It can be mitigated to some extent. And there they begin Sankirtan. They bring Lila Kirtan, Nam Kirtan, the banks of the June. Of course, Krishna finally reappears on the scene. At which point, they ask him a question. Politely and cleverly, they cite a riddle to him, describing three different types of lovers, and which is the best. They're asking, but what they really want to know is, what the heck kind of lover are you? Here we did this. We came all this way, and you left us. You went with one, we kind of understood that. Then you left her. You know, what's going on here? What kind of lover are you? So, of course, Krishna replies. He speaks about different types of lovers, and those who reciprocate only when others give, selfish people. those who reciprocate when, even if others don't reciprocate. Two types. Those who are family members, in other words, parents reciprocate to the children, even when the children don't reciprocate. And then those who don't have families, or compassionate, or sadhus, they do the same. Even if the students or other people, ordinary people, disregard them or abuse them, still they show compassion to them. And then, of course, there are people who are self-satisfied, jnanis, they don't reciprocate, and they're envious people, and people who are ungrateful, and so forth. So Krishna plays out all these different types of lovers. And then he says, but the reason that I left you was what you really want to know, what you're really asking, is because this is my nature, I do this. I disappeared so that I could increase the measure of your love, because when one finds something valuable and then loses it, the extent of its value increases and shows up in the person who's feeling the loss. So I wanted to see that. And so he tenders this answer, and it seems to, the gopis were implying, you're the ungrateful type. He says, not really. This is my position. This is why I did this, and so it mitigates the situation to some extent. And the rasa dance begins, which is the final chapter of the Ras Panchadhyaya. But what's evident from this, of course, is that Krishna, we're trying to understand Radha Prem. She's the embodiment of that Prem, to understand her. But Krishna didn't understand her. What is our position? Krishna didn't understand. He disappeared, yes, and yes, to see the measure of their love and understand it when it's showcased in separation. But seeing it, he said that that he couldn't reciprocate in kind for it. He said, the kind of love that you have is like that of sadhus. It's perfect, and you've left everything, as I mentioned earlier, at all risk, and you're exclusively devoted to me. You've given up parents, everything. I don't give up my parents. I haven't given up my friends, my cows, everything. I haven't risked my reputation here in the way that you have. And so I can't reciprocate in kind. But what he's really saying from the Gaudiya perspective is, he says that in the life of Brahma, I could not reciprocate. Or once in the day of Brahma, I'll try to reciprocate. How's that? By becoming a sadhu myself, and then making devotees for you. I'll try to make up for the fact that I can't reciprocate in kind your love by doing this. Is, of course, the verse that out of which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears. Krishna admits that he cannot reciprocate in kind their love, and of course this piques his interest to taste that love, because he can't reciprocate in kind. It means it's beyond the ken of his own experience, beyond the reach of his own experience, and he's Rasika Shekhar, and so for him to be so, he has to be the taster of all rasas. But here in this rasa, Radha's love, the gopis' love exceeds, their experience exceeds his own. So, of course, he wants to taste that love. And this is the genesis of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna in his sadhu lila, right? And he's teaching through his example largely about Radha's love and trying to step into it. At the end of Chaitanya Charitamrita, he's successful when he says, Asli Shamam, Padaratam Vinashtam, the last verse of Shikshastakam. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says in here, excuse me, and here, This verse is spoken by Radha, he says. So again, the implication is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was successful. He is Krishna now. He's tasted the bhava of Radha. So I mean, this is we're going in this direction. The point here, Krishna's having a hard time doing this. So we should have very high regard for this. It's not easy to talk about it as it began, but what to speak of experience it. Even Krishna doesn't have the experience, and he has to have a whole new avatar, new Leela, to hope to be successful in experiencing the prema of Radha. And as an overflow of that, of course, the opportunity for us to taste it is made available. So it's very appropriate, therefore, the approach that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur took, Pujala Ragapata Gaurava Bhange Matala Harijan Kirtanarange. We should not worship Krishna with reverence as they do in Vaikuntha, but we should worship with reverence for the Gopikas, for the Gopas, for the people of Braj. Mahobhagyam, Nanda Gopa Vajokasam, Yon Mitram Paramanandam Purna Brahma Sanatanam. What is the position that they've attained? What can Krishna give any of them? Right? That's Brahma poses the question. What can you give them? They've given their whole selves to you. So with regard for those people, we shall try to, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself did, as Gaura Krishna did, preach about their exalted position and then invite their compassion, their grace, such that they'll give us entrance into that ideal. So it's a difficult subject even to talk about, much more difficult to attain, but this is the way. You can't think your way there. So to extend this discussion, of course, it's after the Rasa Leela, then Krishna had to think, here I said this, I'm going to try to pay you back by once in the day of Brahma coming into the world here as a sadhu, following your example, your sadhuness, sadviness, your saintliness, and try to recruit devotees for you. But that's a big statement to make. He doesn't even understand the prema. He hasn't experienced it. He said he's going to do that. Well, that's not an easy task. So he has to scratch his head after the night after and think, how am I going to do that? Therefore, he consults with Subal and comes up with a plan. The plan is, with the help of Subal, who in some of the texts is portrayed as having various magical types of powers and abilities, and that also in the context of theatrics and dramatic performance and so forth. They come up with a plan, and with Subal as a what do you call them? What are those people who called in movies who change your complexion and dress you? And
makeup artist. Makeup artist.
What did you call them?
Makeup artist.
Makeup artist. Yeah, he takes the role of a makeup artist and dresses Krishna like a goddess. Dresses him up like a goddess. And so dressed as a goddess, now he can approach the compound of Radha, where otherwise in his original form and dress, that's not possible. And as he comes onto the campus, so to speak, from a distance, Radha sees this beautiful damsel has come. Who is she? She asks Lalita Vishaka, who is this beautiful girl? I'm so attracted to her. I feel a natural affection for her. They've never seen her before, and so forth. So the gopis gather around, but this goddess, who is, of course, Krishna in disguise, doesn't say anything. He keeps the veil, pulls the veil over his eyes, and Radha tries to bring out from him. She gives him good psychological counsel. There seems to be something that's bothering you. You're here, but you seem concerned. Your heart is pained about something. If you share the pain of your heart with others, as we gopis do, empathizing with one another, sharing the pain of our own separation, it will mitigate the pain to some extent. So we all have a human experience of this. If we find someone, a sympathetic ear to listen to, we can just share our troubled mind with them. And ease our troubled mind. That's what they do. So she counsels her like this, and still she doesn't get a response from her. She thinks, and if it's maybe it's not psychological, maybe it's not a heart pain. I could see you're suffering something. Maybe it's physical. I have some oil that my father gave me for massage that's said to cure all ills. And regardless of the science of that, the Ayurvedic science, the veracity of it, whether it's true or not, the fact that someone who loves me, my father gave it to me with love, means it has love in it. So if I give that to someone else, that is an expression of my love, and surely that will cure your physical ailment. So she sends a manjari to bring that oil, and I'll give you a massage. Massage your head and your back and your arms and chest and so on and so forth. Of course, that's going to be a problem given that Krishna is in disguise. So now he begins to speak. and there's the need for the massages is mitigated. And so he asks, what Krishna is doing there, of course, he's coming in disguise. He wants to learn about Radha Prem from Radha in some, at least theoretically, something that he can be better equipped to live up to his own claim that he is going to once in the day of Brahma take birth and recruit gopis. Well, how can you recruit gopis if you don't have Gopi Prem, Gopi Bhav, right? So of course, ultimately he hasn't said this, but he wants to taste it himself, right? He wants to experience that. This is a problem for him. So while we can't get it simply by hearing about it, that can be helpful nonetheless. Learning some theoretical, getting some theoretical knowledge. Of course, he's going to gain theoretical knowledge in good association of Radha herself. So he says, here's the problem. This is what's paining me here. This is why I'm here. I'm a goddess from the celestial realm. And everybody goes, oh yeah, it seemed like it. You're a goddess. And there in heaven, we ladies hear the sound of the flute, and it disturbs the whole atmosphere. The ladies become on fire with passion. And when their husbands go to embrace them, they get burned. And they have to step back. So the whole heaven is the affairs there are disturbed by this flute. But seeing this, I reasoned, I have to find out the source of this flute. And I did my research and my yoga and my meditation, and I concluded it's coming from here, down on earth. And in this little simple village of cowherds. And I have been watching and witnessing and seeing the goings on between Radha and Krishna and gopis. And of course, I know now it's his flute, and how Radhika, how you are responding to it. and I have come here, and my desire is to become a maidservant of you. I want to become your maidservant. You please take me in. So Radha is very pleased to hear that. She's attracted to Krishna. She's sorted this all out and so forth. But then Krishna, in the disguise of the goddess, says, of course, that, but I have a problem. I want to be your maidservant. I want to assist you in every way. Your prem is, what I can see, is the greatest prem. But I feel there's a problem. And the problem is that despite your love, your prem being super excellent, it is reposed in someone who is not reliable. This Krishna, as it turns out, sometimes he says he's coming to meet you, but then he ends up going with another gopi. Then he shows up late, tells a lie. And these type of affairs are the norm for him. I don't know if you're aware of this, but this is what this guy's like. He's unreliable. So, of course, the first lesson here is that if we want to have prem, any variety of prem, we have love that it endures. We have to have an object to repose that love in that is reliable. In this world, no such object is to be found, because everything is here today and gone tomorrow. So we need a consciousness other, so to speak, to repose. Consciousness constituted other, significant other. This is an English phrase for those who don't speak English. Significant other means like a wife, means like a husband, right? Partner, a significant other to repose our love in, whose constitutive consciousness, as we are ultimately, and is therefore reliable. Of course, Krishna is that object. We're taught that. But here Krishna is, for our sake, and for anybody who's going to learn about prem has to know that it appears that he's not reliable, but he is. So she makes this, Krishna makes this point: your love is great, but it's not reposed in a reliable other. So this is giving me pain. It's a problem. Of course, she also goes on to say, and further, I saw that during the Rasa Lila, he left the other gopis. Then he was alone with you, and then he left you. Unreliable, and furthermore, he's not even religious. He killed a calf, Vatsasura. He killed a lady who came and offered her breast to him, a nurse, Putana. How can you kill a lady nurse? How can you kill a calf? What kind of person is this? So he makes these arguments, and of course then it's up to Radha to respond. And so she speaks about, first, no, you should not think that he's unreliable. Yes, he goes to other gopis, but when he goes with those other gopis, he knows that he's not with me and he can't be fully satisfied. And I know that. I know that about him. And she goes on to speak about it. What she's basically saying is that without sanchari bhavs, there's no rasa. These other gopis, they provide opportunity for sanchari bhavs. Sanchari bhavs are bhavs that come and go. They're transitory. They come and go. That's the meaning of sanchari, vyabhichari, sanchari. And they augment the sthayi bhav, the dominant emotion. In Radha, of course, it is madhurya rasa. So despondency, for example, being angry with the lover and so forth, all these are as I'm speaking about the sanchari bhavs. And these are one of the ecstatic ingredients that are necessary to be combined with the sthayi bhav and arise out of it, such that the sthayi bhav will mature into prema. So she says that all these gopis, they're necessary for there to be prema. Gives them a little bit of lesson in this affair. It's a little bit difficult to understand the affairs between gopis and Krishna, in that, again, he looks like he's unreliable and so on and so forth. Is his devotion to Radha, is it any way compared to her devotion to him? Is it equal? But at the onset, for example, of Ujjwal Nilamani, the commentators point out that these type of intrigues that are part of human love, jealousy, lovers' quarrels, so on and so forth. This is part of human love. So for the love of Braj to be human-like and therefore afford the intimacy that it seeks to, all these aspects have to be there. Therefore, all the commentators have said that Madhurya Ras, if it was to personify, it would be a Priyanarmasaka, who, like Subal, for example, like Ujjwal in particular, you could say, that assists in these types of intrigues and so forth, helping to make them possible. So these point being that these rendezvous, these detours, if you will, of Krishna to Chandravali or others and so forth on the way to meet Radha and whatnot, they're all necessary for Radha and Krishna to experience the Mahabhav. So she answers in this, she's giving him a lesson about prema. But in the context of that, she says, really, first thing you have to understand is, if you try to talk about prema and explain it, you won't get it. It doesn't come from that. You can't get it like that. She gives a strong emphasis on what we might refer to as Gyan Shunya Bhakti. It's not something you can think about and get. You have to stop thinking to get it. You have to develop, through association, you have to get attachment. And from attachment, when you have attachment for something, automatically you think about it. Automatically thoughts of it and the desire to have it or to please it because you like it surface in the mind. So in the mind of one who has raga, then in the mind, automatically one will think only how, without trying, how to please the object. With everything I do, am I pleasing the object of my love? Will this please the object of my love? Will this please the object? Will that please the object of my love? And this is praying, moving automatically like this, without calculating, thinking about it. Then with regard to his disappearing from her during the Rasa Lila, she gives her own perspective. No, it's not his fault. You shouldn't think like that. He doesn't have any fault. He knew that if all the gopis, that I was feeling sad for the other gopis and compassionate for them. Therefore, it was getting in the way of our union. And therefore, he thought that that's a problem. But if I stay here and they come, that'll be another problem. Then they won't understand the glory of Radha's love. But if I disappear and then they come, then they'll understand the virtues of Radha's love. And then they'll all accept her as their guru collectively and so forth. So it was, she says, it was only for me that he did this. This is Howard. In other words, she's speaking about every instance which could be construed to be a fault on Krishna's part and reason for her not to love him actually becomes a reason that much more for her to love him. It looks like one thing. It looks like calm, but actually it's prema. And prema, by contrast, can never be broken. In other words, whatever the lover does, however bad it might be interpreted by a third party, is converted into a positive that only causes the love to increase that much more. So Krishna's learning this from Radha. And then with regard to his killing Putana and so on and so forth, she says, actually, it's not like that. He didn't do that. He didn't do that. He was just a baby. How could he kill a big nurse like that? But when the name giving ceremony was conducted by Gargacharya in the cowshed, he said that Narayan would do wonderful things through Krishna. So it's Vishnu Narayan that, given his good birth, does these things through him. He has no fault at all in this. So she's showing by her response the nature of the prema. You cannot find any fault in the object of our love, and all these apparent faults should be understood in this way. So Krishna's, in the form of the goddess, has learned something, but then he says, it's all well and good. I mean, again, I have no doubt about the measure of your prema. But while you love Krishna, how do I know that Krishna loves you? You say Krishna loves you. You think that he loves you. And you're giving all these excuses for him. But where is the evidence other than what you say, which is good, but I mean, is there any supportive evidence that he actually loves you? Has anyone said that? Have any of his friends said that? And if they did, they don't tell the truth anyway. They never tell the truth. You can't rely upon those Gopas. For you, I make no profit. This is the way of the Vaishyas. So even if they said it, even if Subal says, Krishna loves you, Radha, we can't rely on that. So how can we know? Is there any? This is my final concern, so to speak. So then she gives another lesson in Rasa Tattva. She says what? She says, I'll tell you something. If you have faith in me, then you'll believe what I say. If you don't have faith in me, why should I even bother to say it? I can't support what I'm going to say necessarily, but if you have faith in me, just here's what I want to say to you. Krishna and I are one. We are actually only one soul with two bodies. What she's teaching here is that if you want to be my maidservant, you have to understand this, that Radha and Krishna combined are the Vishaya Lambana, are the object of love. The two of them. Radha's position is, for the Manjari, is one in which the Manjari loves Radha a little more than Krishna. And her love for Radha causes the love for Krishna to increase, nourishes it. Ordinarily, a Sanchari Bhav nourishes the Sthayi Bhav. Here, what would be a Sanchari Bhav called Surat Rati, love of the friend, in these extreme case, as I'm in Manjari Bhav, is causing that the Sthayi Bhav, love for Krishna, is nourishing the love for Radha. It reverse. So in a sense, the two, Radha ascends to become, along with Krishna, the combined object of love. So she says, I know what Krishna's thinking because he and I are one, a bit of tattva, rasa tattva. He and I are we're two bodies, but we're only one soul. So Krishna, of course, his hairs are standing on end. He's witnessed the sattvika bhavs of Radha. He's witnessed he learned a little bit about Sanchari Bhavs. He learned something about Vibhav, Ashrayalambana, Vishayalambana, and so forth. But he begs for some further supporting evidence and he gives an argument by which he thinks he can supply it. If what you say is true, who can we ask but you? You say you're one with Krishna, but here's a way we could resolve the situation, and all my doubts would be eradicated. You sit now, go into meditation, because you and Krishna are one, and bring him here. You just do that. So Radha's, of course, now she's nervous. How am I going to do this? So, but anyway, so she said as much. So she sits down, closes her eyes, prays to Surya, Mitra, the sun god, who she worships according to her birth, like Chandravali worships the goddess Durga, Radha worships Surya, and so forth. And in her meditation, of course, then Krishna quickly changes his clothes before all the gopis and shows that it's him, tells him to be quiet. Radha comes out of her meditation, and there's Krishna sitting there. And all the gopis celebrate. Just see, Radha and Krishna are one. Mahabhav Rasaraj Duyekarup. These are lessons that Krishna is learning from Radha, that he will try to now put into place in Gaur Leela. And the one, Krishna, becomes two eternally, and the two, being one, appear in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, giving this prem to everyone. These are some lessons about prem that, as I say, are hard enough to articulate. What to speak of attaining it? Krishna is trying to attain it. So we've got ourselves a very, very high goal, very difficult to reach. We should hold one another's hands and try to help and seek all the help that we can get with the humble hearts. We go forward, and certainly all these gopikas, gopas, all these people of Braj, they are all extremely compassionate. You cannot imagine. We can attract their attention, not by our strength and power of knowing, our ability to follow strictly and so, but by our weakness, by our necessity, by our appeal, by our weeping. But we can. This is the way to attract their attention, and then they give us the power, and they will imbue us with them, with Swarup Shakti, and we'll be able to function in that, take part in Leela Seva, participate in that realm that is far beyond the ideal of the yogis living in the caves of the Himalayas that are giving up everything, fasting and giving up sleep, and so to attain their ideal, Brahmasahuja, far beyond Vaikuntha, the reach of Vaikuntha. Even Lakshmi could not enter into the rasa dance. And here, we're supposed to enter there. So our effort should be, as I often say, make effort to get grace. That is our effort. To bring Pujala Ragapata Gaurava Bhangi, Matala Harijan Kirtana Bhangi. To attract the people of Braj, that Swarup Shakti to descend within us. Radhastami Mahamata Bhatiti ki jai, Radha Prem ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Brinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi. So, any questions?
Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Tripurari Maharaj ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Jai Radharani. Any questions? Any comments?
I have a question, Guru Maharaj.
Chidahari, yes.
Yes. So you said that all of the gopis are required for prem. And so it made me think of what then would we call what Mira had for Mira's relationship with Krishna.
Mirabai.
Right. So she only envisioned herself with Krishna alone. So could we consider that from the Gaudiya perspective? Is that even prem? Because where are the Gopikas to help nourish that? Where are the Kaya Vyuha of Radha involved? They're not there. So what is that thing that she had?
Of course, Mirabai is a famous saint, lady saint, and she was a contemporary of Jiva Goswami, I believe. I remember long ago when I first started the Sri Chaitanya Sangha, I was writing a magazine before I'd written any books, and it was entitled Clarion Call. And I did an article on women in bhakti, I think I called it. And the interview was, the article was centered around an interview that I did with the leading lady of the, I forget what the name of the group was, but the widows, they were widows of Vrindavan. She was a leader of the widows of Vrindavan, who were all Bengalis who had lost their husbands and to fate, and as a result, they came to Vrindavan to live, and live the saintly life and so forth. And so I was interviewing her, and in the context of interviewing her, I said, "So, do you have in your group a patron saint?" She didn't quite know what I meant, and I said, someone who is the main saintly figure that you gather around, so to speak, and a feminine figure. And to make my point, I said we were near the Mirabai temple. There's a little Mirabai temple. I said like Mirabai. She said, oh, she understood. She said, no. Not Mirabai, shaking her hand like, no. Then she said, Vishnu Priya Devi, with such feeling. I was so moved by that. Oh, of course, Vishnu Priya was a widow. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would take a sannyas. She's their patron saint. And how she lived in separation from Mahaprabhu, just an aside in the context of answering your question. But yes, what is the experience of Mirabai? Because, as you're pointing out, Chidahari, we don't find in Mirabai's songs any mention of anybody but Krishna. There's no Yasoda, Nanda mentioned, other gopis, and so on and so forth. Now, the Raga Bhakti of the Gaudiyas is something that is attained by following the Ragatmikas. It's an important theological point in Jiva Goswami Sandarbhas, that there is a Swarup Shakti. A good part of the Bhagavad Sandarbha is dedicated. There's something called the Swarup Shakti. And this Swarup Shakti is what makes the spiritual world go round. It gives a form to God. And it personifies as his friend, as his mother, as his father, as his lover, lovers, and so forth. You can't have a Krishna as a child without a mother. It's not going to be one of us. So, because here we are in this condition. So, if Krishna is to be eternally a son, eternally a friend, he has to have eternal friends. Jiva Goswami cites this famous verse of the Bhagavatam, making this point in his chapter about Sakyaras. He says, Yan mitram paramanandam purna brahma sanatan, from the Bhagavatam. So Krishna has friends that are eternal. He has to have eternal friends. So these are manifestations of the Swarup Shakti. So if we're to come in touch with him, we're coming in touch with all of these friends, lovers, parents, so on and so forth. The setting and everything. So this is absent in her prayer. So all we can say about Mirabai is that she's not following Rupa Goswami's path. There are all kinds of people who have some type of love for Krishna. There are people who love Krishna, like Madhusudan Saraswati. He was a strict follower of Shankar, but he had bhakti. He writes things in his Bhagavad Gita commentary that show more love for Krishna on his part than many devotees have for Krishna, even though his philosophy is that ultimately Krishna is only a he's the Purna avatar, but all the manifestations of the Godhead in this world are only part Saguna Brahman. And in the ultimate reality, there's only Nirguna. So there is no other there. There is no interaction. There is no love and so forth. Bhakti as a means. But in the context of looking at bhakti as a means, he has great love for Krishna. Shankar himself said he'd like to retire on the bank of the Jamuna and just listen to hear about the pastimes of Shyam Sundar. So, so I haven't studied Mirabai, but she's not a Gaudiya Vaishnav. And when I remember Sridhar remarking similarly on this point, that that in her songs there's no mention of these things. So, what's her position? It's not the preem that we're after. So what exactly is what I have to study? She could be a Mayavadi, ultimately. It's possible. I don't know if that. There's all kinds of possibilities, but yes, for the frame of Radha and Krishna to be fully expressed, they need gopis are necessary. This is emphasized in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And the Sakhi Baba of certain Priyanarmas. This is necessary. These are necessary ingredients. So without that, she doesn't have it. So what she has, we don't know. We're not that interested either. And there's all kinds of mystics out there. And some of them respect Krishna. But we follow Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gaur Krishna, Sadhu Krishna. Did I answer your question? Yeah, okay. What else? Here I see a question. It looks like it's in Spanish from Jessica. Yes, that his mission was successful. As I mentioned at the end of Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Shikshastakam verses issue forth from the lotus mouth of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and in the embrace of and under the counsel of Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar. And when Mahaprabhu, the last verse is mentioned, Krishnadas in his commentary says, and this verse was spoken by Radha. So the implication is, yes, he was successful. He tasted Radha Bhava. And of course, Krishna is going to be successful. He's Rasaraj. He's very crafty, very, very, very clever. So he came up with he proceeded with a very clever plan by which to taste that bhav. First, he went to Radha after the rasa dance, got a little schooling, created another Leela, and so on and so forth. And in that, he was taught the intricacies of Radha Bhav from Ramananda and Swarup Damodar, and Gadadhar Pandit as Radha stepped out of the way that could all take place. So yes, he was successful on the one hand, and he was also successful in making available, so to speak, as a byproduct, the type of Madhurya Rasa, which we sometimes refer to as Manjari Bhav, by which one can come as close to what he experienced. In other words, Manjari Bhav is the way to come close to experiencing Radha's Bhav as one could, other than coming Radha herself. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Radha. If you look very carefully at Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you're going to look real. You never see those things where you look at it and you turn it one way, and all of a sudden you see there's something else there. I don't know what they call that. Look and see if you can't see cow in there. Oh, there's a horn. There's a hoof. Oh, yeah. So if you look very careful at Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you'll see Krishna. Oh, keep looking, then you'll see Radha. These are two combined. So yes, he was successful. And by his grace, you will be successful as well in your pursuit of your spiritual ideal. I give you my blessing for that. What else? Tripurari. Okay. Hold on. Shamsundar apparently was doing this Spanish translation and not here when you're speaking, and he was speaking at the same time. So Shamsundar did, because you took the last question, was there a further comment from that, or what did you want to say? Shamsundar? Okay, I guess you can't hear me. Guruvakya, you want to go ahead and ask Gururani's question? No, not really, but it's true that Radha's love is always increasing. Praying by nature is full, but always increasing at the same time. What it means is that this is an eternal moment, which is difficult to understand for us who live within time and space. So it's eternal moment. It's always happening. It's always happening. It appears to be happening at a certain time, and then another time and another time by our calculation, but it's a moment in eternity. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a huge moment in eternity. What can we say about it? There are beginnings within eternity. How can that be? What is the beginning of eternity? Well, it's the end of time. Eternity has a beginning. What? Where is it? It's at the end of time. So when you get to the end of time, then you can understand eternity. And no one has spoken about eternity more than Gaudiya Vaishnavism. What can you say about Brahman? Nothing. What can you say about Krishna Lila? Well, you can never say enough. So it is a dynamic, ever expanding. Does Krishna have new Lila? How could Krishna have a new Lila if the Leelas are eternal? Does Krishna have a new Leela? Or does Krishna always have new Leelas? He's always new. So there's a becoming, there's a being, eternal being, and eternal becoming in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So it could get better every time, that's true. But it's all one time at the same time. Always getting a little better all the time. So I have to admit, it's getting better, a little better all the time. What else? Shamsundar, he said, Dandavats Pranam Guru Maharaj. Yeah, this is a statement of Jiva Goswami. This is a statement of Raghunath Das Goswami. This is a statement of Rupa Goswami. This is a statement of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So I'm only repeating their statement that if we were to, and we do poetically personify Ujjwal Rasa, Madhurya Rasa, takes the shape of a Priyanarma, Saka. So these friends of Krishna, they're intimately involved in one of the things that they do. For example, one of the anubhavas of such friends of Krishna is that they're the message bearers of their Yuteshvara, of their Gopi group leader, bringing message to Krishna. They take the side of the, support the side of their group leader and so forth. So they're very much involved in the intrigues. In fact, in terms, let's say, for example, the mana of Radha, where she becomes angry with Krishna for good reason or for no reason, no good reason, it would seem, and the whole group of sakas who are involved in Narma sakas and sakis, they need to break the bond of Radha, that there can be again pranay, union of Radha and Krishna. So no one is more capable of doing that than Subal. He is the most capable. So how can you dispense with him? So the point only being is that for some reason they've personified Madhurya Rasa as a Priyanarma Saka rather than as a Priyanarma Saki, who is equally important, involved, necessary. Without the Sakis, this love of Radha and Krishna cannot reach its fullest expression. That's true. But also without the Dharmasakas, and they have personified the Madhurya Rasa as a Priyanarma Saka. You could say by extension, Krishna is a Priyanarma Saka, I suppose, but they haven't said like that. And therefore he is Madhurya Rasa personified. For some reason they've given the Ujjwal Rasa personified a male personality. The only implication is that these types of intrigues and jealousy and pettiness and so forth that are undesirable in the material world, but are nonetheless part of human love, have to be part of Krishna's love life for it to be human-like. But because it's Krishna's love life, they don't have negative effects. They have the positive effect, giving rise, as I said earlier, to sanchari bhavs, augmenting the sthayi bhav, so on and so forth. So I've written a little bit about this in my book, forthcoming book, so you'll be able to read about this idea. What else? That's it, huh? No other questions on the chat. So nice to be with you on this occasion. See some of you.
There is a short question in Spanish from Mahapriya.
Mahapriya, bye. Yeah, that's for sure. Radharani is Bhakti Devi. So without Bhakti, the jivas cannot meet Krishna. Yes. How you get Bhakti? That is through someone who has Bhakti. Whoever Radharani has placed herself as Bhakti Devi in the heart of some sadhu, that sadhu becomes compassionate. Then he or she then shows compassion to others by giving them bhakti. So the Swarup Shakti seems to decide, like, for example, Sarupa in Srimad-Bhagavatam is called a cowherd boy, Priyanarmasaka, by Radha one day. Says, listen, I got a mission for you. I want you to go. There's a Mathura Brahmana. He's now gone to Braj. I want you to go there, be his guru, and bring him back to serve Krishna. I know that by sending you to him, he will please Krishna in a particular way as a Priyanarmasaka. So go on. So Bhakti Devi has some say, you can say, in who we are, ultimately. She's the medium. And she lives only, Swarup Shakti living only for the pleasure of Krishna. She knows what will please Krishna. All right, so nice to be with you all. Srimati Radharani ki jai. Shri Radhastami Mahamotsavati ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Bol. I'll be with you next week.
Yes, Shri Guru Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Hari Bol.
So, all the devotees, the Tattva Vivek series will go on as usual every day, apart from Saturday, where Bhakti, that is Bhakti Vinod Thakur Appearance Day, and Brigupad Prabhu will give us special class for this occasion. And on Sunday, there will be, as usual, the Swami call. Thank you. Hari Bol. Happy Radhastami.